I wanted to create a new playlist of videos because A Streetcar Named Desire seems to be the area where a lot of our students underperform compared to the areas last year. Having read the examiner's reports, there's no obvious reason why that is, but the reports are really keen to suggest certain things about the play that candidates could do a little bit better. So primarily this is for students, looking at Streetcar for the Edexcel exams, but I guess it carries over for different exam boards as well. The big thing that they really stress is that there needs to be focus on the author, i.e. Tennessee Williams, and the methods that he's using. And I think one thing I've noticed from a lot of my students is maybe because this is a play, maybe because it's quite an engaging story, people get a bit bogged down in talking about the characters and talking about the plot and going through the play either scene by scene or character by character. So hopefully I'm going to try and use this playlist to maybe draw you away from some of the more obvious points in Streetcar. Look a little bit more at stage directions, because I think they allow you to talk about Williams's craft and Williams's decisions a little bit more easily and stop you falling into the trap of talking about the characters as though they're real people. And also take you into some more interesting or unusual aspects of context, so away from maybe the more obvious things about masculinity in America or the effect of the Second World War or the New World versus the Old World, and more towards maybe more more unusual points that might be there. I'm using this version of Streetcar, which is the Penguin version, pretty cheap to get hold of online, and I just want to sort of draw you through some unusual bits, or some bits that I think might be worthy of comment that maybe wouldn't get attention from other people. Two things I'll be referring to quite a lot in terms of context are Southern Gothic and plastic theatre. Just to give you a really quick overview, plastic theatre, when we talk about that, what we mean is the type of theatre that Tennessee Williams is putting forward. It's a slightly less realistic version of theatre than we've had previously. So Tennessee Williams, for example, uses animal noises and jungle noises and weird lights. He deliberately adds in things that are non-realistic, basically to express abstract ideas. So the jungle noise is reflecting Blanche's inner turmoil. That's a feature of plastic theatre. The audience know that they're watching something that isn't real, but that kind of adds to the emotional effect. I think that's a key thing, so I'll mention that a few times. The other one is Southern Gothic, which is kind of a genre of fiction that starts really in the 1800s, I guess, pretty much after the end of the Civil War. And it's very similar to the English Gothic, so there's a big focus on nature and the power of nature, but also these horrific images and focus on sort of dreams and visions. But it really takes off in the South, in America, after the Civil War. And I guess that kind of makes sense, because in the South you've got essentially a declining way of life. You've got a very idyllic way of life of the past that is all about nature and is all about, big gardens and mansions and the white columns that Stanley mentions. But there's a paradox there, because obviously that is made off the back of slavery. So you've got this acknowledgement, I guess, in the South of America that the way of life that they did very well from is flawed. And there's a lot of guilt there. So this gives rise to the Southern Gothic, I guess, where on the one hand you've got this focus on nature and the nostalgia for what they've lost. On the other hand, you've got this guilt that leads to these horrific images and these horrific visions. And I think Blanche as a character, in the first scene she mentions Edgar Allan Poe, who's a leading pioneer of the Southern Gothic. I think Blanche really sums this up. So those two things I'll draw on, because I think they allow you maybe to go into more interesting contextual ground than you might otherwise go into. Okay, so that's just a little quick intro into what I'll be talking about, and then the next video we'll start with scene 1.